because of the way Russia has been treated by the West, and specifically the United States, since the falling apart of the Soviet Union, because of a lack of respect, being told to just shut up, you guys lost the Cold War, we're not going to talk to you anymore, you're of no importance. The Russians, who are a proud people, have gradually moved in a more nationalistic direction as a result of that, and a more kind of anti-Western sentiment as a result of that. Oh, so that's the way you're going to treat us? Well, that's the kind of thing that you run into nowadays. And I certainly don't support it, but I know where it's coming from.
Well, the danger, again, is always not only the policy, but the real danger is the accidents. The accidents that happen.
Yes.
The near misses.
The near misses, yes indeed. Well, talking about movies, I mean, there are all kinds of rumors about the way you work, that you're very tough with your actors. How do you feel about it? I mean, you've worked with some great actors, right? Are they prima donnas? How do you act with them? Tom Cruise, who's big name. You tell him, Mr. Cruise, do this or do. How do you work with those people?
No. I think the secret to working with actors is individuals. Everybody is different. The actors are not a group. They're all came up their own way. They all have their own ideas. I try to work with them one-on-one. I try to put together a rehearsal at the beginning so that we all kind of a general sense of the script, where we're going. But that doesn't often work because sometimes actors are in different places, different films, and it happens very quickly. But you try to get a big rehearsal. If not, rehearse as much as you can. As much as you can. Nothing wrong with rehearsing. That's not to say you're doing it, but you're practicing. You're hearing it. And with an actor, I feel like it's like playing, you're a bit of a coach. In other words, you could say I'm tough because I want the actor to do his best. I want the actor to find the strongest, most valid way to do his role. I want him to try. I want him to feel that this is important. There's nothing worse for me than an actor who approaches this like, I've done this before, I've done this 50 times, and don't worry, I can do it. I understand that attitude, and I understand where it comes from, but it doesn't make me feel secure. Some people you do want to get them, you don't need much, you need a conventional performance, but there are key roles in every movie. Let's say 7 or 8, 10 roles in every movie that really require attention and work. So cast carefully. If you cast wrong, that's tough. You sometimes have to let somebody go or find another way to do this. But there's always problems of communication with everybody. I try really to run it as democratically as possible, but as you know, a movie set has to go. There is a time period. So that's what rehearsal is for. Do it before you get to the set as much as you can, because a movie moves like a machine, like a train. And the parts have to go together, and we have to get to the destination on time. Otherwise, you get cut off.
I was, as I was preparing to meet you today, I went through your filmography, and I counted 20 full-length feature films that you've done.
That's right.
That's pretty amazing. 20 films, and I don't know how many awards and all of that. Of all of those films, are there any, well, they're probably all to a certain extent, but are there some that really stand out for you personally, that you look back on with a sense of, I don't know, fondness, pride, whatever?
I used to answer that the same way, but I guess I'm getting older now. Because every one of those 20 films was very hard to make.
Sure.
Every day you go to work and you have to do your best, and you fault yourself if you don't feel you lived up to it. For example, Alexander in 2004, I had a tough post-production schedule, and I had to finish it faster than I wanted. And I had a studio partner that was difficult for me, and they wanted to show the film too early. This happens to other directors, it's not, but it happens a lot. So the film that came out in 2004 did not make me feel that I'd done my best. I went back 3 times, actually twice, and did a DVD version, 2007, and a 2014 version called The Ultimate Alexander, which to me has finally got me to where I wanted to get to with this very difficult project. 2014, 10 years later. You know, Platoon took 10 years to make. It was written in 76, it was done in 86. Born on the 4th of July was written in 79, and it was made in 1989. There's a strange symmetry to that. It was 10 years later for each one. And I never thought when I wrote them that I was going to direct them, because I was looking for another director to get it done. So I ended up being the director. That's the way sometimes fate works. Which ones? Yeah, sure, the Vietnam ones, they add up because it was my personal experience. Certainly JFK was the most tortured for me as a post-production because I had never been so criticized, nor did I jump out into the public eye like that. I had been relatively quiet. After JFK, it was hard to hide, you know. The media had called me out, called me all kinds of things. And then Natural Born Killers was also very painful and difficult because of the criticism of its violence and misunderstandings of what I was trying to do. And then I still look back on The Doors, which I loved as something that I wanted to do very badly because I loved the music and Jim Morrison. So making that film was a delight, but also very painful and difficult too. More recently, I won't say, you know, Wall Street, you can say this, that. You know, I loved making World Trade Center. It was very difficult, painful too, because we had smoke in our lungs every day. And then working on W with this George Bush story, very contemporary, it was very controversial. But remember, the movie ends in 2004 when Mr. Bush goes to Iraq. He goes into Iraq. I made it in 2008 when his presidency was ending. So it had nothing to do with those last 4 years. I felt like his life, we knew what his life was going to be when he committed to the war in Iraq. So I finished a story that starts as a young man. So everything has its place, everything has its reason, its heart. Snowden was very difficult because of the computer work and a world I don't know. Ed Snowden introduced me to something that I had, how to put that on film was difficult. Computer life. And the documentaries, 7 or 8 of them now, from Castro to Chavez to Mr. Putin to Arafat, and Netanyahu was in one, have given me a breadth of knowledge and wisdom that I'm so glad I did documentaries. I would like to make some more because you know, that you go back to the front, like you're a journalist, you know, you go back to the front lines. If you live in Hollywood only, you get artificial.
Obviously, film has been the center of your life. And what I'd like to ask is there anything is there a film that you wish you hadn't done, looking back on it? I mean, as a journalist, I know there are things that I wrote that I wish I hadn't.
Such as?
Well, I told you I was a propagandist. And propaganda is often a half lie or a half truth, very often. And I often regret the fact that I was involved in that. I wish it gave me some knowledge and what have you, but I'm not proud of it, let's put it that way. So is there anything at all, is there a movie that you say to yourself, gosh, I wish I hadn't made that movie, or not? Not necessarily, I'm just kind of interested.
It's when you ask the question, my first thought was the movies I hadn't been able to make that I worked so hard to make.
That's a different story.
It's a different story, but there is no one movie that I regret.
That's good.
There are things in a movie that I regret, and I think I could have done better. But the 2 movies were actually were Milai. I was down to we had 3 weeks left in rehearsal. 3 weeks. We had built the whole village in Thailand. Milai was a massacre in Vietnam, and I really wanted to make this movie, and it died because the brokerage firm Merrill Lynch went under in 2007-8. If you remember, that was the beginning of the financial crisis. So our main backer, our financial backer, was out of business. The world was changing.
Yes.
And the other one was Evita, which I had written, and I was going to make it with Meryl Streep back in the 90s. But we had a scheduling conflict. She was doing and I was doing. I wish I could have made the Evita. I had a second chance with Michelle Pfeiffer a few years later. But again, she had a problem with scheduling, so it didn't happen. And then I lost control of the project. But I think I could have made a lot better Evita. And I always wanted to do a musical.
We have a minute left. Is there one movie that you have not made and you still hope to make?
Yeah, there's one, but I can't tell you about it. A producer is sitting out there, and hopefully he will be successful in raising the financing for it. It's a personal story, a movie I've never done this kind of movie before. It's a real risk for me, and I hope I'm not too old to pull it off.
Well, first of all, I think we all hope that you can make it, so wish you that. Thank you very much for this conversation. I found it fascinating, really did. And the best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Спасибо, друзья. Спасибо вам, Владимир Владимирович. Спасибо, Оливер. Thanks a lot. Давайте еще раз проводим.